Today is May 4th, and we're talking to Mrs.
Vohsen.
And your first name is?
Gerry.
Gerry. And Gerry, we thank you for letting us come over, and I really don't know much about you at all, so I'm going to be asking you some questions. And the first thing I'd like to ask, if you don't mind, could you tell us when your birthday is?
April the 5th, 1919. I am now 92.
92! No
92 years
kidding.
of
My
age.
mom's just turned 90. Well, how long have you lived here in Bridgeton, first of all?
Well, let's see. We got married in 44, and I lived in St. Anne Village for about 7 years. I had my first child when I lived in there. And we moved out here in January of 53. And I was pregnant at the time, expecting my second daughter, who's Diane Marie. And she was born in St. Joseph's Hospital in St. Charles. And she had an ailment where they put her in an iron lung
Ooh.
for about 6 weeks. She was not a preemie, but we had her over there in St. Charles. Dr. Pagameyer delivered her, and they had her in a little iron lung. And we would go over and look at her through and they would be so happy. Oh, she took an ounce, and she took this, and she was in about 6 weeks.
Now, what year was that?
1953.
1953, she was born.
And we had just moved in here in January.
In this house?
In this
on
house.
McKelvey?
On McKelvey.
Was it always Bridgeton?
No, I think it was Robertson.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Now, you said you had one child before Diane Marie. Who is that?
It was Melinda Jean.
Okay.
She's now married to Bill Daly, and they're married like 28 years. They live in St. Anne. They don't have any children.
Okay.
And Melinda worked for National Supermarkets for 21 years before it was changed hands and everything.
Well, let's back up if you don't mind, and let's talk about you.
Okay.
Where were you when you first started off in life?
I lived in Mount Carmel. I was born in Mount Carmel, Illinois. That's about 165 miles east of here. And I went to grade school, high school, and when I got out of high school, the man who started Sanford Brown Business College
Yes.
was a school teacher from that area.
Oh.
He came to Wellston and started Sanford Brown Business College. So he'd get a hold of the parents and see if they would send their children out here to school, business school. And it was on Easton Avenue. That's what it was called. And I was out of high school. I graduated in 37, but I came out here in about 39. And the school would find us a place to live out here.
I was going to ask you about that.
Because my parents weren't going to, they didn't have the money
Sure.
to send me, put me in a apartment or anything. So they found us a place to live. So I lived with some beautiful people, wonderful people. They were Jewish people on Easton Avenue. No, not Easton. On the way to University City. Well, I can't say it right now. And it was a mother and a father, and a daughter was a dancer, and she was just recently divorced and so depressed. And she had a little boy who was about 3 or 4 years of age, and that was, I forgot what her name was. She was a dancer. Well, anyhow, her brother was studying to be a lawyer. They had a beautiful apartment along there. And I stayed with them almost 10 months because the school would, got us a place to stay. And then when I graduated, they got me a job at State Bank in Wellston.
Wow. That was a pretty good deal.
Oh, yes. I made $14 a week.
Oh. Were you a teller? A bank teller?
No.
No?
I just typed and let the people in when they wanted to get to their safe deposit boxes.
Oh.
And if we worked on Saturday, you didn't work every Saturday, only till noon. And people would buy their automobiles, and sometimes their payments were $3.50 a month.
Their what? Their payment?
Their payments for their cars when they bought a car. And they'd come in, and I wasn't the teller, but I'd let them in their safe deposit box. And I worked there, well, that was 41. Well, then I got that job at State Bank. And so I would go, my father would send my tuition to me. It was $17.50 a month, and he'd send me an extra $1. Well, on Saturday I'd go to Wellston and buy me a new pair of patent leather shoes. So I'd go down, and there was a funeral home over there on Easton Avenue, and there was a place where these gals learned to be a beautician. So these girls says, well, we're going to go to Toontown tonight on Saturday night. And I said, well, what's Toontown? Oh, they said it's a dance place. And I said, well, how do you get there? Well, you go on Grand Avenue, and you go till you come to, well, I forgot what the street was. Anyhow, we went down in the middle. There was a tavern, a liquor place on the corner. And you go down that street, and you get in there before 8, and you dance till 12. So I did that.
Let me ask you, excuse me, what kind of dances were popular at that time?
Oh, the jitterbug. So I went there on Saturday night, and so they said, well, and I don't even remember what any of their names were. And they said, well, we're going back Sunday night. I said, oh, that was February of 1941. And I said, well, I guess I'll just go back Sunday night too. Well, in the meantime, I lost track of the Jewish people, but they were very nice to me. And I went to different places to stay, and if you were dissatisfied, all you had to do was tell the school and get you another place. So anyhow,
even after you graduated and were working, they still helped you find living place?
No, I had gone to the school with this lady. Her name was Betty, and she lived in a 2-story house, and she was one of 4 children. Her sister was Doris, and Doris was training at DePaul on Kings Highway. And Betty says, you can have Doris's room because she's going to school. So anyhow, I went on Sunday evening, and it was where all the young people went. And up on where the dance band was up there, and then they had young people handling soda thing. And so this young fella, tall fella, come over, and all we women didn't have a date. So he said, I'll just dance number 12 with you. And I said, okay. He said, how'd you get down here? Oh, I said, I come on a streetcar. Well, where do you live? I said, well, I live with a gal and her parents, and her uncle had been a streetcar driver, and he was retired, and he lived up. I said, I live on Suburban Avenue. Well, he knew where that was. So he said, and how'd you get down here? I said, oh, I came on a streetcar. And he said, well, I'll take you home.
Wow, that was pretty forward.
Well, yes. And he had been a construction worker. And he had gotten hurt, and this lawyer got him some money. So he hightailed over to Clayton, and he bought him a Chevrolet Coupe. And he said, my car's down here on Spring Avenue. And I said, well, okay. So after the dance was over, we went on, not Ballast Road. Anyhow, it was off of Delmar, eating place. I forget what the name of it was though. And we ate a great big hamburger and he took me home. And that was February 16 on a Sunday. And we went together for 3 years and we got married 3 years and 3 days later in 1944. Of course, the war had started then.
And what was this young man's name?
Robert Ernst Vohsen. And so he said, well, where do you work? And I said, well, I work at State Bank in Wellston. Oh, he said, my brother's got a checking account there. This is on Sunday night. So when I went to work Monday morning.
You checked into it. Uh-oh.
Oh, he's got $200. Oh, he's rich.
But this was the brother, not the young man that was interested
Yeah.
in you.
He had his older brother was Charles Vohsen, and then Bob was the second son, and then there was another brother, Lee, and then there was another brother, Floyd.
Oh, now where were these Vohsen brothers living?
They lived on Creve Coeur Mill and McKelvey
Oh,
on a farm, a Vohsen farm.
So is that pretty close to where Pattonville High School is?
It is. And when Mr. Vohsen passed away,
That was the father.
the father,
Okay.
at age 67,
Wow.
Charles was the farmer, and my husband left the farm at 16 to be a laborer because he wanted to get a job and work. So anyhow, the attorney that got him this money, he went to get that Chevrolet, and his dad says, those tires will sure taste good next winter. I don't care. Mom, I think you have to sign this paper. Well, she said, okay. So they lived on the farm. And so Charles, being the farmer, and the war was on, they said, so Mr. Vohsen passed. So Charles says, well, Mom, I think we better put this farm up for sale because I can't make us, you and me, a living on just my working there. So they contacted somebody and they erected 591 homes on that property.
Oh.
They're still down there. At that time, the homes cost $11,000. And a lot of these people from in the city, when they're building these houses, they'd say, well, we'll have them done by so-and-so. And if those houses were not finished, those people came out on Monday morning and started installing their houses because they were desperate.
They were ready.
They were desperate
Right.
for
And this is Chatham Village you're talking about?
and it's Chatham Village. And she wanted them to put it on with a Vohsen name.
Uh-huh.
Now some of those houses have that name on if they go farther enough down on the so they built Grandma a nice little 5-room brick home down there, and she lived there.
Where did they come up with the name Chatham?
I don't know. Maybe the guy that was building the homes, I don't even remember what the name of his was.
Well, now, how old was your Robert when you met him? How old was he?
Well, let's see. He's was a year younger than me, and I was. Well, he was a year older than I am, because he died when he was 79 years of age in 1997. So he's now dead 14 years. But anyhow, let's see now, anyhow, we got married in 1944. We celebrated 25 years, and we celebrated 50 years. And we danced at LaGrange Ranch over off of where the Steak and Shake is there on Lambert. It was called LaGrange Hall.
I
And
mean,
that,
catty corner from Northwest Plaza,
Mhm.
that's taking shape?
yeah.
Well, let me ask you, where did you get married?
We got married at the church in Chesterfield, Evangelical Lutheran is what it was called. Now it's called St. John's United Church of Christ. Because Mrs. Vohsen, her name was Hulda Stemme. She was from Chesterfield.
Oh.
And she's related to a lot of the Stemmies up there in Chesterfield. We got married. And my parents came out from Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing any of these people. And we hired the high school band. Well, now, but anyhow, now let's see, what was his name? Well, I can't say it right now. It was
That's
a
all right.
high school band. And so we danced. We just loved to dance. And so the high school man, can't think of his name right now.
That's okay, that's all
But
right.
anyhow, he said, oh, but I charge time and a half.
Uh-oh.
And that was extra $25. Well, my dad got that $25 an hour. But escapes me right now what his name is.
Well,
You guys
it may
know
come
him.
to you.
Oh, was it Ralph Dubray?
That's who it was.
Thank
Ralph
you.
Dubray.
Thank
yes,
you,
he had
Jenny.
a very good band, didn't he?
Yes. And he and his wife still live up,
Yes.
as far as I know, up in Florida. I see them sometimes at, we go to the Nomali's Catholic Church every year. We don't miss it in March and also November. Ralph Dubray, that was his band.
Well, what did your Robert do then? You said he was a laborer, but he got hurt. So then what was he doing then when you got married, as far as working?
He was an iron worker. We got married in February of '41, and we had a friend that lived, her dad run the Vi Johns Laboratories.
Hmm.
It was in Wellston, and it was by a streetcar track. And that mother and dad, they used to go to Florida a lot in the winter. And so the war was on, and this man, let's see now, he was with he came to St. Louis to work, and he married this girl, and they were down in Florida, and her dad was, now let's see, who was it around that by John. So they were in Florida, and Bob, being a laborer, when he left home at 16 years of age, he worked on a road down, anyhow, they was doing concrete work down there. And so we decided after we got married that we would go to Florida, go to Orlando and see what they were doing. Let's see, can't call her name right now. Well, anyhow, we went down there. And so he was a laborer during the war years. And so I had gone to work for the federal government when you had to get a CWT, Certificate of Warranty, to get your gas.
Oh.
Well, it was war years, and we went down there, and we got gas. Well, he went to work for a federal government down there, building a federal government down there. And we stayed down there about a year, and they charged us $25 a month for this little apartment. It was a living room here, a bedroom here, and a bathroom, and a little bitty stove. And she says, "Are you using an electric burner?" And I said, "No, it's a gas stove." She thought we were cheating.
Oh,
Well, he liked to fish at night.
at night.
Yeah, he met a guy that was a car salesman. And Mandy Quaidum come down there and visited us one time, 'cause her son was in the Army, and he was down there, and she came to visit us. You know the Quaidums.
Yes.
And so she didn't stay with us, but she got a hold of the pastor there. And anyhow, she taught me to, if I was going to fry chicken, to put the flour in a baggie was a bread bag,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have probably these guys. Shake that flour in there and then fry it. Okay, I'll do that. And we stayed down there about a year. And so then while we were down there, he was on this job as a laborer. Went down there to help build that federal building down there for the poor. And so this one guy was a big shot that was with this other company came in and he says, "Boy, where are you from?" Bob says, "St. Louis." He said, "Go up to that Angelville Hotel and give that guy $5 and you're an iron worker."
Oh.
Bob says, "Okay." So he went and got his iron worker, and when he came back up to St. Louis, all he had to do was go to the iron worker union. Guy said, "Put you to work." Okay. And he could read the blueprints. Now, he didn't have much education that we call formal education, because it was a little Penn Junction school where the Hans went, you know,
My father.
all those other people you know.
Mhm.
And so he could read the blueprints. Well, he'd get on the job, and of course, you know, they cuss around and all that. He'd get so mad because when these iron were fabricated in the factory, they were 12 feet, 6 feet, so and so. And these people that didn't know how to read the blueprints, it cut those pieces together. He said, "God damn it, don't do that. If you need a 6 foot, get it. Don't cut those big ones down, because then we gotta get more iron to put in this iron." So he was a pretty good boss. And if he didn't like the job, he'd tell this guy, George Cousins, he used to come over here and play poker. He was an iron worker, business agent. Well, of course, they're all dead now. But he made us a living. And he didn't work for one company all the time. It was just whoever the boss wanted to send them to. So he made us a nice living.
Now, did you work then when you came back from Florida?
Oh yeah, I worked for I went to work for Veterans Administration.
Was that downtown?
I believe it was. 8th and Olive was where I worked for the Veterans Administration.
Was it secretarial work?
Oh yeah. And we had the lawyer, we had about I would say about 6 lawyers on one part of the room, and then we girls were over on this side, and one lady's name was Etherton, and she was from Chesterfield, and her husband was away to the war. Anyhow, we all sat in this little secretarial pool, and the lady who was the lady up at the front, when they wanted to write a letter, these lawyers, they had the medical papers of these soldiers who were coming back. And those lawyers would read those medical things. And he'd go up there and he says, "I need a secretary." And so they'd say, "It's your turn, Jerry." Okay, then you go over there and you'd type your little letter. And this lady was a wife of a chiropractor in Overland on Woodson Road. Can't think of her name right now, but they're all deceased. So that's how we do it. Well, the war was on. You're supposed to stay in your own, meat coupons and coffee coupons and all that. And so my husband, he liked to fish, so he wanted to go to Florida in the wintertime, in February, and go down there and fish at night. He'd sleep on the job. He'd get those guys working for his federal thing. And so, anyhow, we stayed down there about a year, and then we came back to Missouri. And the first house we bought was in St. Anne Village on St. Arthur Lane. And his uncle was a real estate guy. And Uncle Louis Minks was his name.
M-I-N-X?
No,
No.
M-U-E-N-K-S.
Oh.
Louis Minks. And Louis Brinks' brother had a blackmail shop up here near where the Bankers lived. And he got us this little house, and it was a little 4-room house, and we paid $5,000 for it. And it was a priest and a nun who had gotten married, and they lived in that little house. Don't even know what their name was. They left us a couch. That was about the only thing that was there. We paid $5,000 for that house, and there was a second mortgage on it. And Bob's dad wanted to borrow $5,000 from us. And Bob says, well, okay. So we gave him $5,000. He wanted to buy some cattle. And he bought
Cattle?
He wanted to, because he'd been a farmer, so he bought himself some cattle, and he gave us our $5,000 back.
Okay.
And we lived in that house for, I don't know just exactly how many years, but we paid it off at the loan place on St. John's.
Okay.
And we paid it off. And then when our Diane was born, we had already moved out here because...
How did you come by finding this house? Was it because it was close to your husband's family?
No, there's another house that was down here on this other side, and that was Omer Rotman. He was a carpenter. So Bob and him were building that place on Pennsylvania Avenue, P&G, soap company.
Procter and Gamble?
I believe it was Procter and Gamble. It's still down there by this by that funeral. Well, anyhow, Omer says, you're going to get a new baby. Now buy my house so I can buy me a farm at Montgomery City.
He wanted to move out.
He wanted to go out because there's a big tree out here that's probably 600 years old. I don't know how old. He says, if they ever think they're going to get me in the army, I'll hang myself on that tree.
Wow.
So he moved up to his farm at Montgomery City. And he just had a wife, and he had 2 children. So we bought the house.
This house that you're presently in on McKelvey.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
And he moved his furniture out that window in that last bedroom over there.
He used the window to move the furniture
Moving
out.
And we moved our furniture in.
Through the window?
And what was wrong with the front door that you couldn't use the front door?
I don't know.
Is it a superstitious thing or
No,
something?
that's the way he moved it out. And
We'll have to go look at that window.
Well, I'll let you go in there. Chris is down in the basement. He's wondering who's here. Well,
Yeah. Very handsome young boy.
yeah, he's 20 years of age. And so he moved his furniture out, and we moved in before Diane was born. Before my Diane was born. So
And what year did you say she was born?
February 1953.
Okay.
So that makes her 58 years of age.
Okay.
So he moved up there to his farm, and I don't know how many years, but then he did take his own life
Oh my goodness.
after he got up there.
Oh wow.
Well, anyhow, I was up there a short time, and his 2 children, a boy and a girl, were still living. He came back after he moved up there in 53 and built this house real fast as he could get. And there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. You go through one bedroom to get to the other bedroom. So I've got a cedar chest in there in that closet that we got it in there. I don't know how we'd ever get it out.
You'll have to dismantle it, I suppose.
I assume that. Well, anyhow, Omer died, and his wife lived to be 90 years of age. And she stayed up there, not on the farm, but in a small town. And her daughter, Kay, lives now in Virginia, And I would say 3 or 4 years ago at Christmas time, I get this card from Kay Lewis. It says, "Do you still live in my mother and dad's house?" So I waited a few months, maybe 2 or 3 months. I sent her a letter. "Yes, I still live in your mother and daddy's house." And so she has been a builder and never had children, but she divorced her husband, whoever she was married to. I know that comes in, because it comes up in every family, I guess. But I was fortunate I did not ever have to have a divorce. Anyhow, so now let's see, what else do you want?
Well, let's see. You had one daughter when you lived in St. Anne, and then your other daughter was born when you lived here. And then, did you say you had another child after that?
No, I didn't have any other children.
So you have two daughters.
2 daughters.
Now, where did they go to school?
Pattonville.
And when you say Pattonville, exactly where was the school they went to?
They went to Penn Junction School. They know
Grade
where
school.
that is.
For grade school.
For grade school down here on Creefgar Mill Road. Because it's now that Grace Church.
Yes, so.
That's where they went to. Now, Melinda did not go to kindergarten. But Diane did, because she was 5 years difference in their age.
Mm-hmm. And then they went through the Pattonville school system?
Melinda graduated from Pattonville High School. It was on
The Rock Road?
In 1966, and Diane was graduated in 1971, but they had it down to the arena when she graduated. It was a big class, so they went downtown for that.
But the school was still located on the Rock Road then?
At that time, yes. Now it's a learning center.
Right, yes.
Right.
And they, of course, they have the middle school there.
Yes, and Melinda went to the college on Purcell, and she worked in the office of the security. And then whenever they had a class that were buying their books, they always had her in on that, to do that.
Are you talking about Florissant Valley Junior College?
Florissant Valley. Yeah.
Okay.
And so Melinda, working for National Supermarket for 21 years, she went on Page Avenue when they first started there. And she's always done the secretarial assistant, what do you call it, administrative assistant or something. But now Diane worked for a place called, anyhow, their truck was Extra. She worked there. It was up on Frost Avenue, I believe she said.
In Berkeley?
Yes, right. And then when she married this boy that she's married to now. She was never married before. Neither one of my girls were married before, but both of their husbands had been married before.
Oh.
Melinda's name is Daly now. And my mother's name was Melinda, and my sister's name was Jean. So Melinda is Melinda Jean Daly. And Diane, we named her as Diane Marie Vohsen, and she married a Tony Ruggieri. And Tony's father worked on Woodson Road for the government records.
Oh, sure.
And they had about 7 or 8 children. Well, Tony was married before. And so when she married him, he had a daughter, and she just turned 31 the 1st of May. Well, anyhow, he and his wife divorced. And so then when Chris was born, with Tony being the father, his daughter was 10 years older than she was. So he's 20 now, and he'll be 21 in November.
This is your grandson.
Yes.
Where does he go to school? Or where did he go to school?
Well, Tony was raised as a Catholic boy up on Woodson Road on Williams or something, to that church, whatever that one was. I forgot now what the name of it was.
Presentation or All Souls?
No, I believe,
All
no,
Souls.
not All Souls. It was the one on where Del Monte Food was on Woodson Road. between St. Charles Rock
Yes.
Road and
There's
Natural
another
Bridge.
Catholic, Saint Rita's on Woodson? No.
No, though I was Wagner Electric. Our company at Wagner Electric used to go to St. Rita's Church. We still go there twice a year, August and December, because our union was paying our money to go and have our meetings there 6 times a year. Well, they ran out of money, so now we go in August. We call it a picnic, only we order chicken in, and we go in December. For anybody that ever worked for Wagner Electric.
And you work for Wagner Electric?
I worked for Wagner Electric when my girls were in high school. And I worked at the packaging part. It was on Laddie Avenue. It's now bulldozed. And so when they got into high school, I wanted to go back to the typing. Because my husband made a living, and he liked to sleep in the winter and fish in the spring. And I went in there and they said, we're looking for a mature employee. And I said, well, I'm one of them.
You got it.
In other words, I wasn't 19.
Right. Mhm.
And the reason I worked for Wagner Electric, that was also war. And the gal that was the secretary in the tool design department, her husband was in the army and he was leaving. And so they said, we want you, I first worked out at Laddie, and I worked there a year and a month. They laid me off, cutting off. So we went to Florida in April so we could fish. I said, now don't tell, I said, Melinda, don't tell them at Wagner that I'm out of town, because I was drawing unemployment.
Uh-huh.
And they finally called on a Friday. And Melinda says, well, my mother and dad are coming back Sunday night. And the lady that was hiring, she said, you tell your mother to get a hold of us Monday morning. So I called her. And from the Laddie office then, I went to work right immediately down there on let's see, what was it called? Anyhow, the place that was down there by the railroad track where Vijon was. And I worked there from May 1970 until it closed in December of 82.
Did you have your own car at that time? Did you
Well,
drive?
Bob always had me a car.
Okay.
When we first moved out here, I didn't have a car. From St. Anne to out here, because I was expecting this baby.
Uh-huh.
And he still had that little coupe. It was a 1939 Chevrolet coupe. Had it for a long time.
Did you know how to drive it?
He taught me. I didn't know. When I lived with my parents down that little bitty town, my dad didn't have any money to send me to school. He was an office worker. He worked in the legal department. He was not a lawyer, but he was pretty smart up
Mhm.
here. But
Was
I
there
say,
a streetcar on the Rock Road at that time?
yes, streetcar was there.
Okay. And Westlake Amusement Park was in
Yeah,
business?
and that's why I called Jerry Hahn to see what was the name of it. And he said Westlake Amusement Park.
You can almost see that location from your,
Well, I
From this
could
window
see
right
St.
here.
Charles Rock Road
Mhm.
Yeah.
and Target. And
yeah, I mean,
And
if
then it
those
was
other
Venture
buildings
at
weren't
one-
there, you probably would have been able to see the
when I
roller
moved
coaster.
here, that was still a farm.
Mhm.
1953, that was still a farm.
Do you know who owned that land across the street from you?
No, yeah, it was a dentist and a wife, and the wife had a sister. Those 3 people lived there.
Laura Brandis. The Brandis sisters.
I guess that's who it was.
And Dr. Dr.
Traeger.
Vandover.
Oh yeah, that was the name. You recognize those
Yes.
names.
And Dr. Traeger lived
Yeah,
next
he
door to
lived
you.
over here. He moved in over there. He was building that home while we were expecting Diane. And while Diane was in the hospital for her 6 weeks, because she didn't get out till March 18th, which was Grandma Vohsen's birthday. And anyhow, she had that, well, it wasn't a collapsed lung, but it was a little thing. And the man that serviced her when she was first put in there, I gave birth to her. seemed like it was on a Tuesday, and 2 days later, they said, they came into the room and they said, we're putting her in one of these little iron lungs. And they brought a man from Chicago to service it. And it was a thing that it dripped down to get her to breathe. She was not small. She was 7 pounds something. And so she was in there for 6 weeks. Well, in that time, seems like one of they had a big strike. And Doc Traeger, he lived over here, and he was a podiatrist, he said, and we assumed he was. And so these guys, Roy Brannicky, one of them, all of them, they played cards over here, pinochle probably. And Bob would go over there, and his wife, Doc's wife, would make a big pot of chili, and then Bob would be their guy. He didn't play the cards. He'd go get the chili for them, and all this and that. And they moved from Kings Highway and did their feet. And then in the fall, Doc Traeger would want to go to Chicago to this man that sold, was in the shoe business. And he'd go up there and he'd have Bob drive him all the way up to Chicago to get the Cadillac from there. So Harriet could have a new Cadillac every 2 years. And Bob, and they would take off like on a Friday. And Doc Traeger would say, stop at this tavern. And they went into the taverns all the way up to Chicago. And they stayed all night with the man that was in the shoe business, bring the Cadillac back. Bob
It's a good thing it's an easy drive up to Chicago.
So anyhow, that Bob was his buddy like.
I see.
And Bob, and then Doc Traeger would take him down to, down Chester, Illinois. The guy's name was Shields. He was in the plumbing business. So Bob would take him down there because he wanted a drink, and Bob was the one that he'd say, well, you drive the car.
He was the designated driver at the
like
time.
it.
That's a new name.
Sounds like it, yes. Uh-huh.
But,
Yes.
So what was going on in your neighborhood right after that period when
Well,
they
this
started
was
to build
only-
the highway?
this was only a 2-lane road here.
Right, but I mean, when they started to build Interstate 70, that was right in your backyard.
Yes,
wasn't
it was, right.
And how long did
Because
that
old
go on?
Dr. Harmon,
Uh-huh.
remember him, or do you?
The
No.
family, yeah.
Well, he operated on nearly all the boys' hernia operations, because on the farm, lift this, lift that, you know. And he was back there, and then when they wanted to build that, they wanted to take the front of his farm. He said, you don't do that, you take the whole farm. So that's why that's
Harmon.
called Harmon Estates.
I see. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But this place, I can't remember, that was built over here too, this building over here. But I don't remember what year it was, but it was before the highway went through.
Which building are you talking about?
Right here, next door to me.
Oh,
Oh, the doctors.
See,
Some
this
medical building,
Yeah.
medical offices?
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And across the street from you, we have the Bridgeton Trails Library,
yes.
and we have a fire
Fire department
station,
there.
and we have the Naomi House, which is, what, assisted living? Or?
No, this is, this is, they're able to take care of themselves. I guess you would call this Naomi House, because in the back is where
Veronica House, Anna
Veronica
House.
and Anna House.
Yes,
And that's where Mrs., you know who it is,
yes, Helen McNamee.
Ellen McNamee. She's the one that tells us when we're getting ready to make our Bridgeton letter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was,
That's who
and
you
see,
got.
I was working then at Wagner Electric, and then when they wanted to take off part of this front property, this was supposed to be a full acre. Now the next people property is an acre and a third. So we were still, this was Pruitt's clear to the Rock Road.
Mhm.
And Creasel lived in that farmhouse Remember down
Yes.
there on that side of the road?
Manila and Francis Pruitt were your neighbors.
And Manila's still
Yes.
living.
Yes,
She's still down there.
and she must be
Well, she's
Nine.
turned 89.
89, is that all she's?
Yes.
So you've seen a lot of building and a lot of changes.
Yes, and this is wonderful, this third lane in there. I mean, that middle lane. Because when you come up here in the evening around 4, if the sun's on, you can't tell if they're coming towards you or not. So that's a great invention. Well, I had to go to court on this property, asking me questions and all that. And they dug our driveway out, and I had to park over there for weeks and weeks. Because they wanted to slice this down. And so, anyhow, I ran across some old papers the other day on that.
Did your daughters have part-time jobs while they were in high
No,
school?
like those fast foods. No,
Nothing like that?
they never did do that.
We're just checking on the time.
Yeah.
Oh.
We've got about 15 minutes.
Well, do you, are you involved at the Bridgeton Community Center for any activities?
No, I just take part in putting the letter together.
And which letter is that, please?
Well, we call it a Bridgeton letter. It's about a 5-page thing.
Is it for
The
seniors?
Bridgeton banner?
It's for, no, they don't call it banner. I don't want it. And it's a wonderful letter here. And I don't know how come Robert got his name on it, but he got his name on it. There's pages of it. Page 7. That's 7. Page 5. And this, we put this one in the middle. And this is page 2. Here. 2, 3, there. And we put it together
Okay.
like this. We go like this. We fold it in half.
Would you show the camera this
Oh.
this paper? It's called the Bridgeton Seniority, so the camera will see it.
Just come over this way.
Oh,
And up. Yeah, there you go. And back up a little bit.
And do you type it?
oh no, they print.
They print it.
One of the men who's retired military man, he runs these 1,500 copies
Wow.
before, and we assemble it, and we fold it this way, and we usually staple it, and we mail it to some out-of-town people who used to live here, want to know what's going on.
Right.
So
Keep
they
in touch,
do that.
yes.
So then they sent, and we try to get it out before the 1st of the month, which is always the 1st of May. We do it like a Thursday or one. And Helen McNamee is the one that calls people to remind you of the. And
So you do a little
We-
community service
so
for
I'm
Bridgeton.
called a volunteer.
A volunteer
Now-
work?
Now, on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, we go dining out.
Do you?
And they put it in here where we're going, and they charge us $3 transportation. They come and get us at our house,
Wow.
and we go out early evening, like 4 o'clock, 3:30 to 4.
Would you like to take your seat again so we can see it?
Oh, and then we're brought back home before 7
Well,
p.m.
that's a wonderful service, isn't it? Because sometimes it's hard to drive at night for a
Well,
lot
it
of people.
first started out for the widows.
Yes.
The widows didn't have any time to go out and eat with people, and I didn't go for a long time.
Or feel safe going out at night by yourself.
And
Sure.
I still drive.
Good.
People ask me that. I go,
Mhm.
how would I get around? And we go to the concerts, but that's the only time they charge us. Now, when I want to go to my dentist, I make my dentist appointment, and I tell them you're supposed to order the van to come get you the day before.
Yes.
And so I go to my dentist in my city of Bridgeton. They don't take us to St. Anne, they don't take
I
us to
see.
Maryland.
I see.
And so then I tell them, they'll say, well, call back when you, I said, it's usually an hour trip. And then if I want them to take me over to Country Buffet, because I meet some people who live down on Fifi Road at Bridgecrest. I go there the third Wednesday of the month. I meet them around 11:30 or 12 for lunch. Then usually one of those people bring me home. Tiny Swanner is a person that goes there. She's a longtime Bridgeton resident, and her son also. But I don't deliver meals. Some people do that, and that's good.
Mhm.
And then they have a nice luncheon for us, and it uses a band down at the center, BMAC.
BMAC.
And it's appreciation for taking part. And then whenever the Kiwanis had barbecues, I support that. I don't go, but I buy their food and take active part in it. But now I'm trying to think what else I would do that's...
Are you still dancing?
No. I used to go with the Hans. The Hans they lived all their lives here in Bridgeton, but I didn't live all those years. And we used to go to the farmers' dances. These people that farmed, part of their farm was taken for that highway. The Hans,
Yeah.
Walter Hahn, George Hahn. George Hahn lived where the old, and Bernice would take her groceries to St. Charles, her farming. She's 88 now. I used to go up there and sit with her a lot, and she'd show me the grandkids and the great-grandkids, and I'd talk over old things. Well, we would go to these dances at the Farmers Club, Gravois Farmers Club, and the other one was Sappington. And so George was a good dancer, and so was Walter. Well, Gus was too, as far as that goes. And I would dance with Walter only after he had danced with Bernice.
That's a nice way to do.
And sometimes on Sunday, we would go to St. Charles at a place called Raymond's on Raymond Avenue. And it was on a Sunday evening from 4 till 8. And different ones would say, well, is Geri a widow? No, she's not a widow. And we would go to Illinois sometimes, Highland, Illinois. Sometimes Saturday night at Waterloo, Columbia, and it would be a chicken dinner. We would go down there to eat chicken and all. And we just met friends like that. And some of these people that I used to work with at Wagner Electric, they were there too.
Small world.
Because we all
isn't it?
liked to dance.
Yes, yes.
Some of them are still living. And we were a little bit bad, though, in a way. When we'd go to Gravois, if Bob wanted that corner and somebody else was dancing that corner, we would dance there till they get out of the way so we could have the corner.
Do you
But we
watch
never did
any?
fight.
Do you enjoy watching any of the dancing shows on TV now?
No, I don't. I
You
know
don't?
my daughter does, but I
Mhm.
don't watch it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly have enjoyed listening and talking to you today, and appreciate you letting us come in. I believe our hours.
We have about another 5 minutes.
Yes.
Well, is there something you want to ask me?
What about your husband's ironworking? Did he work on the big arch?
He did, and he
Okay.
knew some of those arch people,
Uh-huh.
and none of the iron workers got killed on that project. And he loved the iron workers and height. But when it was time to clean the cistern on the farm, Charles, you go on down. I'm not gonna go below. And he loved to travel, but he was not a serviceman. After we got married, the Army called him, and we were already living in our house in St. Anne. And he went out to Kansas, and they sent him out there for, to test him or what. And they sent him back, and they brought him back downtown at 12th Street. Now get home the way you get. They didn't provide anything for him to get home. And we were still living we had just started living in our little 4-room house. And you remember when there was a track out there, a dog track,
No, Pennsylvania.
and it only went so far. Then you walked the rest of the way, because it didn't have the streetcars. But when I worked at down on 8th and Olive. We lived in St. Anne, and the bus came right to that street and picked me up when I wanted to go to work on 8th and Olive, and they picked me up because the rest of it wasn't built. That was, well, I was in the first part of that St. Anne on St. Arthur Lane. I go get on that bus, it take me into Wellston at Katz, get on a streetcar and go downtown at 8th and Olive. These lawyers were in the other room, in this, and they took those medical records, and that's what they were telling them how much their payments were gonna be, what their was worth.
Were you in that big cast iron
8th and
building that was the old post office building?
I believe it was the old Oak
Yeah.
one. That was
Yeah.
the Veterans Administration building.
Very neat. We just have a couple of minutes left on the video, but could you recollect what you were doing when you heard the news of Pearl Harbor? Horace?
Now let's see. It was a Saturday night, wasn't it?
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning. I believe that we had, well, what we would do, we would go dancing on Saturday nights. And Sunday we would usually go to the Fox.
Mhm.
And I believe,
You
I
were
don't
at
know
the
if we'd
theater?
gone there then or not. I believe it was, well, of course, if that was early morning, we didn't.
That's what my father said. He and mother were at the early show at 11:30 in the morning down at the Fox, and they interrupted. And I said, Dad, a Sunday morning? And he said, yes, it was a Sunday morning. They interrupted the show to announce that Pearl Harbor was attacked. And so we went to the library in the records division, and there it was, Sunday morning show. And my father was a poor, not poor farmer, but the show only cost 15 cents before noon, and it cost a quarter for the afternoon matinee. So he took Mama early.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were all frugal.
Yes.
That's why I tell people I bought a pair of patent leather shoes for $1.
So, but your husband Bob was not called
He
to
was
service.
not in the service. He had just had a hernia operation by Dr. Harmon, and they called him down to the Market, 12th and Market building, and I guess that's why they refused him then. And Charles was being a farmer, so they never called him because he was
providing food.
providing food. And Bob was a good shopper, because he left home, and when he lived rented a room on McCree Avenue, and he lived with some people called Marvin and Marie. And had met this Marvin's sister. Marv came from Chicago to service those, when you needed oxygen. That's what his business was, Marvin and Marie. And he went with Marvin's sister for a while, and one night he was gonna see, he didn't have a date with her, and he went there, and she come out and went in the car with somebody else, so that was the end of that. So
And then he came to meet
So
you.
Marvin and Marie were our friends who stood up for us when we married in 1944, and we'd had a pretty bad snow that week, and it was beautiful sun. We all took pictures outside, and so when we got married was February 1944.
Thank you very much. We really enjoyed listening to everything, really. We certainly did. I just want to ask you, are those your beehives back
No,
there?
this is a man that he used to have his bees over on in Harmon Estates. Mr. Bennett, Charlie Bennett, and Charlie Bennett, and another lady that sells. Anyhow, Mrs. Nash and Mr. Bennett owned this property next door together. They were friends. And so this man is named Charlie Bennett.